Hi, my name is Jenny and I'm going to be talking about Hurricane Sandy for my term project today. I will now be moving on to my presentation slide. Hurricane Sandy was a devastating event that affected 24 states in the U.S. and affected other countries in the Caribbean such as Jamaica and Cuba. Today we will be talking about the effects of Hurricane Sandy, when it happened, what happened, who it affected, and the aftermath of the storm. When was the storm first spotted, and when did the superstorm hit each area? So it began as a low pressure system and was classified as Tropical Depression 18. It was later renamed to Hurricane Sandy, and that is when the dates started piling down. On October 23 and 24th, Jamaica and Cuba were hit first. From this point, it was considered a Category 1 hurricane with wind speeds of 85 miles per hour. It reached up to a Category 3 once it hit Cuba, but it didn't maintain that wind speed. Later on October 25th, 26th, it hit the Bahamas, but then later it dissipated a bit. On October 29, it was redirected as the eye was visible on October 28th, a day prior, and redirected itself northeast towards Canada. Thus, by the time it reached New Jersey, it was a Category 2. On October 30th, it hit New York, and it was considered a Category 1 with wind speeds of 80 miles per hour. The prediction was courtesy of the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts, or better known as ECMWF. What happened? What was Hurricane Sandy's course of action? So as we all know, storm surge is the primary cause for a lot of destruction in hurricanes. Storm surge occurs when water is pushed 20 feet above sea level and extends up to 100 miles inland. This is the cause for most deaths. Thus, coastal towns would be affected the most. In New York City, 285 people were killed alone because of storm surges. Altogether, there was an estimate of $70.2 billion in damages and $20 billion alone in New York City. So, talking about New York City, the picture in the background depicts the flooding of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. There were power outages in the city as pictures depict. You can see how clearly a portion of the city is in blackout. Moreover, the subway was shut down due to mass flooding. New Yorkers were displaced and had to flee inland to shelters or hurricane relief centers. Many schools or YMCAs would turn into places of havens for these people. And lastly, Halloween was around the corner and no trick-or-treating took effect that year. So as mentioned before, coastal towns were going to be affected the most by storm surge. And because New York City and New Jersey are basically islands that are just barely above sea level, of course they were going to get hit. So on the right, we have a picture of New Jersey, and we can see how it was flooded, separating this whole coastal town into two. Moreover, the European prediction was the most accurate, and so new software was implemented to not delay prediction or falsely report it in the future. And so there was a total island shutdown prior to this, and Prime Minister Peter Phillips encouraged his people to stock on supplies and reinforce roofing on their homes. Moreover, he asked them to take the storm seriously and take care of the elderly, children, and disabled. This meant that he shut down school buildings, government buildings, and the airports. Moreover, he installed curfews so that there would be less crime and more people to take it seriously. On the right, here is a picture of Jamaica and Cuba. Lastly, in New York City and New Jersey, Obama had signed an emergency declaration, and FEMA heavily monitored Sandy. In a quote that I read, all weather events are affected by climate change because the environment in which they occur is warmer and moister than it used to be. This was quoted by Kevin E. Trenberth. Hurricane Sandy was hit with high tide, where ocean levels have risen because of global warming. This meant that the temperature in the atmosphere has increased, and the capacity to hold moisture increased as well, which leads to stronger storms with abundant rainfall. Hurricanes also typically move to the east and out to the sea as the prevailing westerlies entail, but we didn't see this occur with Hurricane Sandy. It followed parallel to the United States, the East Coast, but later on it came inland again. And lastly, perceptions of climate change were challenged, and a survey was taken in New York City, and they found that 80% of people agreed that climate change was real. On the right, we see a comparison of Hurricane Irene, which occurred in 2011, compared to Hurricane Sandy in 2012. You can see how Irene is much more minuscule in comparison to Sandy's huge eye and the way it encircles the U.S. The takeaway is that not a lot of people consider global warming to be real still, and that is a huge problem. A lot of people believe that the world is just going through another phase of an ice age and that we're not really being affected by it. Hurricane season is definitely being impacted by global warming, and it's not helping. Moreover, people will say that hurricanes aren't occurring as often. They might not occur as often, but their damages are definitely more severe. And that is my presentation on Hurricane Sandy. Thank you.